I want to stretch my legs. Was my head bad?" "No. Ze bullet scrape ze hair off, an' turn ze brain seek. I t'ink you be good fighting man in weak. And you will help me up?" Bateese was a changed man. Again David felt that mighty but gentle strength of his arms as he helped him to his feet. He was a trifle unsteady for a moment. Then, with the half-breed close at his side, ready to catch him if his legs gave way, he walked to one of the windows and looked out. Across the river, fully half a mile away, he saw the glow of fires. "Her camp?" he asked. "Oui, monsieur." "We have moved from the tar sands?" "Yes, 2 days down ze river." "Why are they not camping over here with us?" Bateese gave a disgusted grunt. "Because ma belle Jeanne have such leetle bird heart, monsieur. She say you must not have noise near, like ze talk and laugh in ze chanson. She say it disturb, and that it rank you worse with ze fever. She is make you like ze baby, Bateese say to her. But she only laugh at that and snap her leetle white finger. Wait St. Pierre come. He break your head with his 2 fists. I hope we have that fight before then, monsieur." "We'll have it anyway, Bateese. Where is St. Pierre, and when shall we see him?" Bateese shrugged his shoulders. "Mebby week, mebby more. He long way off." "Is he an old man?" Slowly Bateese turned David about until he was facing him. "You ask not'ing more about St. Pierre," he warned. "No man's talk 'bout St. Pierre. Only one, ma belle Jeanne. You ask her, and she tell you shut up. When you don't shut up, she call Bateese to break your head." "You're a sort of all around head breaker, as I understand it," grunted David, walking slowly back to his bed. "Will you bring me my pack and clothes in the morning? I want to shave and dress." Bateese was ahead of him, smoothing the pillows and straightening out the rumpled bedclothes. His huge hands were quick and capable as a woman's, and David could not keep himself from chuckling at this feminine ingeniousness of the powerful half-breed. Once in the crush of those gorilla-like arms that were working over his bed now, he thought, and it would be all over with the strongest man in N Division. Bateese heard the chuckle and looked up. "Something ver' funny once more, is it, what?" he demanded. "I was thinking, Bateese, what will happen to me if you get me in those arms when we fight? But it isn't going to happen. I fight with my fists, and I'm going to batter you up so badly that nobody will recognize you for a long time." "You wait!" exploded Bateese, making a horrible grimace. "I choke you lak white bear. I throw you over my shoulder. I mash you like little strawberry. I—" He paused in his task to advance with a formidable gesture. "Not now," warned Carrigan. "I'm still a bit groggy, Bateese." He pointed down at the bed. "I'm driving her from that," he said. "I don't like it. Is she sleepin' over there in the camp?" "Mebby, and mebby not, m'sieu," growled Bateese. "You make guess, eh?" He began extinguishing the lights until only the one nearest the door was left burning. He did not turn toward Carrigan or speak to him again. When he went out, David heard the click of a lock in the door. Bateese had not exaggerated. It was the intention of St. Pierre's wife that he should consider himself a prisoner, at least for tonight. He had no desire to lie down again. There was an unsteadiness in his legs, but outside of that the evil of his sickness no longer oppressed him. The staff doctor at the Landing would probably have called him a fool for not convalescing in the usual prescribed way, but Carrigan was already beginning to feel the demand for action. In spite of what physical effort he had made, his head did not hurt him, and his mind was keenly alive. He returned to the window through which he could see the fires of the western shore, and found no difficulty in opening it. A strong screen netting kept him from thrusting out his head and shoulders. Through it came the cool night breeze of the river. It seemed good to fill his lungs with it again and smell the fresh aroma of the forest. It was very dark, and the fires across the river were brighter because of the deep gloom. There was no promise of the moon in the sky. He could not see a star. From far in the west he caught the low intonation of thunder. Carrigan turned from the window to the end of the cabin in which the piano stood. Here, too, was the second divan, and he saw the meaning now of two close-tied curtains, one at each side of the cabin. Drawn together on a taut wire stretched 2 inches under the ceiling, they shut off this end of the bateau and turned at least a third of the cabin into the privacy of a woman's bedroom. With growing uneasiness David saw the evidence that this had been her sleeping apartment. At each side of the piano was a small door, and he opened one of these just enough to discover that it was a wardrobe closet. A third door opened on the shore side of the bateau, but this was locked. Shut out from the view of the lower end of the cabin by a Japanese screen were a small dresser and a mirror. In the dim illumination that came from the distant lamp, David bent over the open sheet of music on the piano. It was Mascagni's Ave Maria. His blood tingled. His brain was stirred by a new emotion, a growing thing that made him uneasy and filled him with a strange restlessness. He felt as though he had come suddenly to the edge of a great danger. Somewhere within him an intelligence seized upon it and understood. Yet it was not physical enough for him to fight. It was a danger which crept up and about him, something which he could not see or touch, and yet which made his heart beat faster and the blood come into his face. It drew him, triumphed over him, dragged his hand forth until his fingers closed upon a lacy, crumpled bit of a handkerchief that lay on the edge of the piano keys. It was the woman's handkerchief, and like a thief he raised it slowly. It smelled faintly of crushed violets. It was as if she were bending over him in his sickness again, and it was her breath that came to him. He was not thinking of her as St. Pierre's wife. And then, sharply, he caught himself and placed the handkerchief back on the piano keys. He tried to laugh at himself, but there was an emptiness where a moment before there had been that thrill of which he was now ashamed. He turned back to the window. The thunder had come nearer. It was coming up fast out of the west, and with it a darkness that was like the blackness of a pit. A dead stillness was preceding it now, and in that stillness it seemed to Carrigan that he could hear the soapy, slitting sound of the streaming flashes of electrical fire that blazoned the advance of the storm. The camp fires across the river were dying down. One of them went out as he looked at it, and he stared into the darkness as if trying to pierce distance and gloom to see what sort of a shelter it was that St. Pierre's wife had over there. And there came over him in these moments a desire that was almost cowardly. It was the desire to escape, to leave behind him the memory of the rock and of St. Pierre's wife, and to pursue once more his own great adventure, the quest of Black Roger Audemard. He heard the rain coming. At first the sound of it was like the pattering of 10,000,000 tiny feet in dry leaves. Then, suddenly, it was like the roar of an avalanche. It was an inundation, and with it came crash after crash of thunder, and the black skies were illumined by an almost interrupted glare of lightning. It had been a long time since Carrigan had felt the shock of such a storm. He closed the window to keep the rain out, and after that stood with his face flattened against the glass, staring over the river. The camp fires